Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through the industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Dr. Lino Martinez, is a doctor of psychology, professor, spiritual poet, writer, podcaster, and passionate about joy. Welcome to the show, Dr. Lino Martinez.
Thank you so much. Such a blessing to be here. Thank you so much for your time.
You are welcome to the show, Dr. Lino. You are welcome to India in this online form. And
Oh, I
I'm
love
sure
it.
not and I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to discuss right now. We'll be talking about you have survived a rare genetic disease, over 40 surgeries in 10 years. So we'll be learning a lot about thriving through adversity from you. So that is where my first question is, just help us a bit about your journey so that we know who we are fully listening to.
Yes, so my journey has been quite incredible, actually. So I graduated with my doctorate in psychology back in 2010, and for 10 years after graduating, I underwent over 40 surgeries to save my life from a rare genetic disease called Muckle-Wells syndrome. It's two words: Muckle Wells, Wells syndrome. That's statistically one in a million in the U.S. and one in every 500,000 in Europe. And so, because the disease is so rare, it took many years before the doctors found a diagnosis for me. I was actually 36 years old by the time they found a genetic mutation for what was causing all my ailments. But by then, I had already undergone over 30 surgeries, and I was living in hospitals for about 10 years. And that was my life for a big chunk, a big chunk.
Right, right. And now there is a cure to it. Now you are fully okay. What is how should the audience understand about your condition?
It's a great question. There is no cure for this disease. I cured my disease or this disease. I don't want to say mine because then I own it, correct? But it's out. It's out of my body. And the way that it became out of my body is by connecting with my mind, body, soul, and spirit and becoming really spiritual. Because before that, it was just all medicine and I was a lot in my mind a lot. And I really didn't have a spiritual connection with myself or with the world or with the planet. And so, in not having a spiritual connection, mind, body, soul, and spirit connection, I lost myself. I mean, I can actually say I don't ever really remember the time when I actually had this type of connection as deep as I do now. But it took a lot of going inward, a lot of meditation. I became a practicing Buddhist. And it was during that practice that I started meditating, I mean, for hours a day. And it was within those meditation practices that I got a lot of visions and I had an inner voice and a lot of inner calming and peace and to tell me to keep going and to keep basically to keep believing in myself and believing and trusting that everything was working out for me and for everyone else, not just for me. Everything's working out for everyone.
Right, right, Dr. Lino. I want to understand a bit about that part. Means there are two parts of this whole uh, renewal of yours. One is the medical part, and one is the spiritual part. So, the medical part, how did you take your spiritual path, your understanding of life, your understanding about Buddhism, your understanding about yourself, into helping yourself with the medical part? I want to understand a bit about that so that others who may be passing through difficult situations, illnesses which do not have a cure as such, they can utilize the spiritual part, the medical part, uh, into their lives and
Yeah.
take help as much as possible, because medicines will do their work, but even the mindset will do its own work. So I want to understand that for the audience from you, Dr. Lino.
Well, it's an excellent question. And I wrote a book about it. It's 379 pages. It's called A Little Less Fear, the same title of my podcast. It's on Amazon, Amazon Kindle, and Amazon Kindle Unlimited.
Can you show the book a bit well, nicely, Dr.
Sure.
Lino?
There you go.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Right.
And so, well, basically, I mean, I did have to go through a lot of medical treatment, a lot of surgeries, and a lot of different types of medications, a lot of misdiagnoses, being diagnosed with things that weren't even true of anything that I was really going through. They were just basically trying to ease my symptoms and coming up with diagnoses based on my symptoms without really having an answer before having the genetic component on it. So, but you did have a question earlier, and I didn't fully answer it as far as like what cured me. But before I went into spirituality, what started to cure me were immunosuppressant medications. I had to inject 3 times a day with one immunosuppressant, and then I had to inject every 2 weeks with the second immunosuppressant. And I did that for 5 years. And that medication, what it does is it brings down the inflammation that was all over my motor neurons and my peripheral neurons. And so once all that inflammation came down, then I was able to really kind of get a more focus on myself and try to figure out the components of what was going on. But AJ, before I even got on that medication, it took spirituality to get me there. Because prior to spirituality, before I was meditating, before I was praying, I wasn't on the right medications. Things were just getting worse for me. And it wasn't until I started to believe and have faith in a higher source that and the higher part of myself where things started to actually come into alignment. And that's when I met the right doctors. That's when I got on the right medications. That's when they found the genetic mutation. And it was upon finding all these medications and getting myself on the right track where I actually started to believe and understand that the universe was pulling and pushing things away that no longer served me and pulling things closer towards my greater and higher purpose.
Right, right, Dr. Lino. And that is where I want to understand that you still could look at life much more positively. You say, I have lived many lifetimes already in this one short waking life. And therefore, I feel it is as a duty with, as a human being with some life to address, vocalize, and show my compassion by relating to the world's
Yes.
sufferings. So I want to understand this thought of yours because at the same time, if you see, having gone through so many difficult times in your life, others who have a bit of problem and they start losing hope, they start losing faith. How would you like to tell them about this? How would you like to tell them about the greatness of this life that we have been bestowed with, and that how we can make it a purposeful living for others, and in that achieve greatness for ourselves?
So for me, first of all, I want people to understand that they don't have to suffer to find happiness. Like I wish I would have known these things prior to suffering, but people don't have to go through a hard life to find happiness. You can find happiness even if you're not having a hard life. Happiness exists within all of us. Joy exists within all of us. But if you're asking this in relation to myself, what it actually took me, see what the disease does is it causes paralysis in peripheral nerves and motor neurons. And there was a time in my life when I was 38 years old for 2.5 years where it paralyzed my vocal cords and I didn't talk for 2.5 years. And when I wasn't able to talk, I had to go to school, to sign school, to learn how to learn sign language because I didn't want to give up. You know, I wasn't born for nothing is what I used to say to myself. I wasn't born in this life for nothing. I have to keep learning how to communicate. And so I went to science school to learn a different way to communicate with people because I have a voice, even though I was quiet and didn't have a voice. There's still an energy that exists within me and it needed to express itself. And so what I want people to know is that it's okay to be quiet and it's okay to be in silence. And that when I was in silence for 2.5 years, that's really when I found my inner light. That's when I fell in love with myself because it was the light of the divine that helped me, that shined the path for me and showed me that I am that same love. I am that same universal light that exists within all of us. And it was in that silence that I started to see love all around me. I started to see love in front of me. Everybody and everything was love. And when you are love, you radiate love, you gravitate towards love, and you receive love.
Right. And you also talk about self love. You and what so why is self love important? And again, you talk about that it takes a mind, spirit, body, soul, and spirit connection to fully thrive in a human life. How do we make sure that this self love is not about selfishness and it's all about the betterment of us as well as ourselves?
Well, first off, depending on how somebody defines selfishness, there's nothing wrong with being selfish. And it really depends on the context that you're using that word. If somebody's using the word selfishness to be greedy, well, then that has a different weight to it and a different energy to it. But if you're using selfishness to be selfless in this selfishness, and to learn how to basically come in terms with the fact that we are one with the universe. We are one with the planet. We are one with the singing birds outside, with the flowers that are blooming, with the trees that are growing, with the roots down underneath the ground. When you start to feel that divinity in everything, and you start to realize that you too have cells, the way that tree outside does, the way the birds outside does, that it also has a spirit, that it also has a soul, you start to integrate all of this energy together, and you start to feel the oneness of it all. And that's where the glory of love starts to rebirth itself.
Wonderful, wonderful. And now, so let's come down to your book, A Little Less Fear. Tell us a bit about this book. How did this idea come to your mind? What is this book about? Who is this book for?
I love your enthusiasm and I love the question. So the book came about right around the pandemic, and it was during the time that I wasn't able to talk. And so when I was meditating, in my meditation, the messages that came down to me said that I was going to write a book about my life so that I can motivate people. And if I don't get my story out, how are people going to keep going in life? It's people's stories that encourage people to keep going. This is what we yearn for. We yearn for human connection. People want to know, hey, you've suffered too. You don't look like you have, but tell me your story. And when people tell you their story, you start to feel comfortable with them. You connect, you open your heart, you open your mind, you open your chakras. And so when I was meditating and it told me that I was going to write the story of my life, I started writing when I was a little kid, about 5 years old. I'm a poet. And I was like, well, I love writing. That's a natural gift for me. And so when I got that message, I started writing that evening. And in 6 weeks, I had the book done, but it took about 6 months to publish it. But I had the book done within 6 weeks. And so I titled it A Little Less Fear before I actually titled the podcast. The podcast came after the book. And so the reason why it was called A Little Less Fear is because everything that I went through with surgeries, and all the body organs that I lost, and all the grief that I went through of losing 10 years of my life, all of my age, all of my 30s were gone in the hospitals. And so I'm 44 now. And so in that grief, I realized, you know what, every time I went through a surgery, I had a little bit of fear. And especially because everybody around me was afraid. My mom, my brother, my dad, another surgery. And they were afraid that I wouldn't wake up. But you know what, AJ, I never had that fear. I was like, you know what, I don't have the fear that I won't wake up, but I had fear of the type of pain I was going to be on when I woke up. What kind of pain am I going to be on? How long is this going to take for me to recover from? I don't know. I'm scared, but I'm going to go through it because I trust whatever's happening. And so I accepted what was happening to me. And in acceptance, I was able to let go of fear every time. And every time I shed fear, more doors opened up for me. And the stronger I felt, and the brighter I felt, and the happier and the bigger my smiles got. I was like, okay, less fear, less fear, less fear. Not no fear, because no fear doesn't exist. Everyone's going to have fear. It's actually part of our survival. We actually need fear to survive. And that's how our central nervous system controls itself in our environment, is through our stress hormones. So I didn't say no fear, but I said a little less fear. Because the more you have a little less fear, then the more you have love, more room for love with less fear.
Absolutely. There is so much to learn from you, Dr. Lino. And I'm
Oh,
sure
right
not
back
just,
at you.
there is so
Right
much
back at
to,
you.
right. And then there is, not just the book, but also from your podcast. Tell us a bit about your podcast. What do you talk in there? Or do you also guests and all?
Oh, yes. Actually, it's my podcast is all guests. I know there's a lot of people that are asking me to do solo podcasts, but I just get so booked. I mean, right now it's like I'm booked months advance because I have so many different interviews, and I'm fascinated by it. I love personal growth stories. It keeps me motivated. I keeps people motivated, and I'm here to uplift the world, raise the frequency, keep us going. Because I mean, if there's so many people out there in the world that don't have somebody to tell them to keep going, keep going. You're doing a good job, or you've struggled as well. Hang on, here's someone else that struggled. Well, you struggled too. There's a lot of people that are in silence. They are afraid to speak, and if they hear someone else tell their story, or it can inspire them and inspire just so many other incredible people that I'm not even aware of, and it's a domino effect. So even if it's one person, I mean, one is better than none, right? Everyone's heard that one is better than none. One is going to have a domino effect because it's going to radiate. That one person can make a change in so many different people's lives that we won't even be aware of. We can only feel it.
Wonderful, wonderful. One thing I wanted to understand: how did you come across Buddhism? Means, why is it that you found so much of happiness throughout, fighting spirit from Buddhism?
Luckily, so when I was quiet and when my vocal cords weren't functioning at the time, I had a friend text me and say, "Hey, you want to go watch a monk speak in LA at a theater?" And I said to myself, "What, a monk? Well, that's something I haven't seen at the time. Yeah, sure, I'll go watch a monk speak." And so I went to this theater in LA with this beautiful monk in his orange robes, and it looked like he was floating on clouds. And there's this bright light. He's in center stage, and he's just sitting there with his right hand in his left, and he just has a smile on his face. And behind him was a screen, and the screen said "suffering." And I sat down. I said, "Well, I know all about this." I mean, what is he going to say about suffering? But the first line he said was, "Just because you are suffering doesn't mean you have to be in pain. And just because you are in pain doesn't mean you have to be suffering." And he said it so calmly and so peacefully with a smile on his face. And I was hooked after that. I said, "Well, I need to learn this." And so that changed my life. It really has.
I can understand. And now you are changing lives. As I said, there is so much to learn from you,
Yeah.
understand from you, and I'm sure a lot of people would like to connect with you. So, what is the best way for them to do so, Dr. Lino?
To connect with me, they can connect with me on my website at www.alittlessfear.com. And I've got all of my social media handles on there, from Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter. All my information, my podcast is on there as well. YouTube.
One,
Yeah.
wonderful, wonderful. One last question I have for you, Dr. Lino, is now that you have seen so many lives, you have seen life from very close, so many surgeries, and also lived so many lifetimes in this one, as you
Yes.
say, what is it that you look forward to in life? What is it that you seek for yourself now?
Oh, what a beautiful question that is. What is it I seek in myself for myself? The thing that I chase and that I welcome and that I accept and allow in my life, the constant one thing is love and joy, happiness, and just integrating all of it. Because I mean, just like anyone, like everyone, there's a lot of different types of pitfalls, unexpected pitfalls. And in these unexpected pitfalls, how can I get myself back up and also embrace the pitfalls and know that it's falling that enables us to get back up? Because if we don't fall, how will we get up? And so sometimes falling is necessary in order to dust yourself off and create a new version that day. And with that said, AJ, I have a poem that I wrote for this. Can I read it?
Absolutely. Yes, yes, indeed.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you for this opportunity. Okay. I am transforming into my inherent nature of light. Obstacles are opportunities, tears are love, and smiles are songs. I wake up at times wondering how I've made it this far, only to get a glimpse of a new day, awaiting for me to bless with joy, to bless with my appreciation, and to shed an exoskeleton that no longer serves me. I spread my wings to soar over a gleaming ocean, and my heart is full today. Thank you.
Wonderful. No words to say.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I
With
love it.
this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.